What are the best current values across the NFL futures markets? We let you know this tonight with some of our best bets midway through the season. All this and more. It's the IBT podcast coming right at you.
I've been going dummy, out of bounds, putting on a clinic. Stick around, carrots in my hardware. KC, caught him in the crosshair. Look at me, been the guy calling Mr. MVP. Keep your ass on the bench by my MPC. Earn my stripes like I fixed this league. Your dog's on the turf, my dog's in the street. You can find me somewhere in between. Never a dull moment like a movie scene. About to do the ops like I did this beat. Let them keep talking RG3. Coming to you live. This is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right. It is Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. This is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast, your place for both a refreshing and feel-good take on fantasy football and NFL gambling. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock, and I had one of the best NFL betting weekends of my life here in Week 6, so I thought what better time to revisit the futures betting market than tonight. I am joined by my co-host. He's a big business, light ranching son of a bitch, Eric Romoff. Eric, you texted me today, quote, "It's madness around these parts." How we feeling tonight?
Man, we feeling scattered. It is madness around these parts. And like you're coming off of one of your best betting weekends, coming in off one of my best DFS weekends of the season. So
Let's go.
Week 6 was kind to us. It smiled down upon us. We'll keep the momentum rolling into Week 7, right?
Absolutely. We are also welcoming back the intern tonight. He's a senior comm major at Purdue. He's also a fantasy football and NFL gambling degenerate. The Big Ripper, Will Starlipper. How's the semester going, brother?
It's going good. Been a little hectic lately, but now I'm just feeling left out that last week was not my best betting weekend.
Hey, we'll get you back on the right side of things here tonight, man. And listen, dude, I feel like it's so many highs and lows every single week. And when you're betting a couple different sports like I am as well, like great NFL betting weekend for me, 0-3 in the college world. So, you can't win them all, I think, every single week, Eric.
Yeah, for sure, right? And that's really the story, right? Prop betting kind of ate my lunch last weekend. DFS kept me going through the week itself. Got into the college basketball futures market. So tied up some of my bankroll in that, right? Did okay in pick'em. I mean, look, you gotta stick and move. Keep your head on a swivel. You're gonna be down some weeks in one category. Other ones are gonna carry you, but you gotta keep swinging and live to fight another day.
Yeah, take the W's with the L's as well. Tonight on the program, front and center, we're going to react to a wild day in the NFL. Trades popping off left and right. Didn't know what to think. I felt like we were planning out the show, and by the time we finished our prep tonight, it was a totally different show than what we thought we were going to be talking about earlier in the day. Between bets, we'll revisit the futures market as we alluded to, and we're also going to talk some in the scope waivers a week early here, trying to save you a little fab here as we get down to things in the season. We'll also take your questions at the end from the forum. Thank you to the IBT family for hanging out with us each and every week, making us a part of your weekly mix. Hopefully we put a little bit of fun back in that grind that is the fantasy football season. I really can't believe, boys, like it's already mid-October. I feel like every year we get to this point, Will, and it's like, man, where'd this fucking season go? And I feel like we're already there.
Oh, yeah. It feels like 2 weeks ago that I was saying week 1 waiver wire, here we go, and now it's week 7.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The easiest way to support us here is give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy this type of content. Also, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Come back, hang out with Eric, Steve, Will, and I each and every Tuesday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Guys, let's go ahead, though. Let's crack this thing open here with a little front and center.
Sometimes taking that first step out the door is the hardest thing to do. Give it a chance, you'll be begging for more. Save the spot just for you. We're all somewhere in between. I thought you'd come to the place we can have some fun. Ain't gotta worry about knowing not what it means. Come and give me another, cause the night is young. At least I so thought.
This just in. Breaking news. front and center.
All right. The worst kept secret in the NFL is over. It is official. Woody Johnson has pulled the trigger after a hard fought Monday Night Football loss for the Bills, or to the Bills, excuse me. Davante Adams trade to the Jets for a conditional third round pick here, gentlemen. Will, let's start with the Jets here. How do you think this affects their receiving core for fantasy football purposes? Adams, he did have 5 wide receiver 1 seasons with Rodgers in Green Bay. They're currently supporting 2 wide receiver 1s in fantasy football, Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard. Wilson, wide receiver 7, Allen Lazard, wide receiver 10.
I honestly think the only one who's going to take the huge hit for this is going to be, well, obviously Mike Williams too, but Allen Lazard, who's been a top 12 fantasy wide receiver.
Yeah.
Not too confident in that going to keep up now, but I'm seeing a lot of people talk about, sell Garrett Wilson. He's fallen down the rankings. I don't even know if I would knock him down like multiple spots, because I think that you look at the Texans, you look at the Buccaneers, these guys that are pass-heavy offenses can support top 15 receivers. You see Chris Godwin and Mike Evans absolutely balling out. I think that the Allen Lazard and maybe even like Breece Hall may see some less targets, but I think that this Adams and Garrett Wilson are 2 clear-cut top 15, like borderline wide receiver 1s.
Eric, how do you feel about it? I feel like you're someone who usually preaches a little bit of patience, a little bit of caution with overreacting to news like this traditionally. Garrett Wilson, though, a lot of this production has come recently in the last 2 weeks. He's had over 50 fantasy points the past 2 weeks combined. And it feels like he's not going to be getting 22 targets again anytime soon. But like Will alluded to, maybe there's still value in just an overall better offense, more scoring opportunity here for the third-year wide receiver.
Yeah, that's really it, right? Your point is salient that a lot of Garrett Wilson's production, I guess productivity over the last few weeks has been very volume dependent. But the thing to remember is exactly what Will laid out there, right? My official statement, my tweet when it all came out is just take a step back and think about all of the 1A receivers that we so happily roster and in many cases start every single week, right? So not a death sentence for Garrett Wilson whatsoever. Yes, his volume will probably take a step down, but if we get to a point where we're looking at a highly concentrated offense like we see in Philadelphia, like we see in Tampa Bay, right? The list can really go on and on. There's certainly a world where both of these players can be well supported and fantasy viable. If you're looking to get your voice heard out there, I actually sent out a tweet with a price check of basically Garrett Wilson versus all of the 1A options, Jordan Addison, Jalen Waddle, Jameson Williams, and basically except for like 1 or 2 guys, it's largely Garrett Wilson. So go vote in those polls because I'm curious to know what you think. But the market is actually proving out to be pretty reasonable about this. I thought there was going to be some overreaction that we could take advantage of in terms of Garrett Wilson's price tag, but seems like people are still rating him about where he should be.
All right, let's do that a little bit here. I want to price check you guys. Mike Evans or Garrett Wilson? What do you think, Will?
Oh, man, right off the bat, I think we're going to see more boom games from Mike Evans, more inconsistency from Mike Evans. I think I would take Mike Evans because of the ceiling. I don't know if we'll see, what we just said, the 22 target ceiling for Garrett Wilson. So I think I would take the ceiling in Evans there.
Eric, same for you, taking Evans?
Same for me. I put Chris Godwin as the 1A there in Tampa Bay.
I was putting him as the 1B almost in Tampa Bay. Mike Evans, yeah.
Oh,
because I would
maybe
easily have Godwin as like everyone would have Godwin over Wilson at this point.
Yeah, maybe it's a point of order. 1 and 1A is the designation, right? 1A, 1B isn't really a thing. But yeah, I've actually got both of them right above Garrett Wilson for the remainder of the season, but by a hair's margin.
Devonta Smith, T. Higgins. What do you think, Will?
I think I would take Davante Smith, but I think I would roll Garrett Wilson over T Higgins because I think Chase. It is weird that Higgins has been out targeting Jamar Chase, so
Mhm.
maybe I'll put my foot in my mouth there. But I like Garrett Wilson over Higgins.
Okay. Eric, where does it land for you on that one?
I would take Higgins over Wilson. I would take Wilson over Smith in those two setups.
And we still like Adams as this low end wide receiver one? Is that kind of where he's coming in for us too right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about where I've got him.
Okay. Okay. Alan Lazard, like you can keep him on your bench, maybe a bye week fill-in, but probably nothing much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to see a world where Alan Lazard, who was already kind
Yeah.
of fringy and boom or bust in nature as it was, it's hard to see an outcome where he carves out a consistent enough role to really rely on, right?
Yeah.
He's more on like the fringe of being rostered kind of conversation than the fringe of starting for me.
Alan Lazard has always already made me really upset this season. I took him everywhere in best ball a year ago when I thought Aaron
Mhm.
Rodgers was going to be there. I had like 60% exposure to him in best ball, which probably not a good idea to begin with, if we're going to be honest, but huge exposure to him, had him everywhere. Also bet him for like, there was a prop out there for Alan Lazard, 10 plus touchdowns. I think it was like 10-1. I bet last year too. So kind of a bummer to see that. You guys, we can probably drop Mike Williams, Tyler Conklin if we were rostering them anywhere, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Breece Hall, I'm just going to say it's neutral for him. I'm not really too worried about Breece Hall. You guys kind of on that with me as well. And like I think if anything, like better offense, more scoring opportunities, more efficiency coming his way, less stacked boxes. Is that kind of consensus thought here, or any difference in opinion?
Yeah, I think that he will take the target share hit a little bit. Not enough to panic, but because obviously I think efficiency and touchdown opportunity will kind of weigh that out. I do think maybe it might drop his floor a little bit when you see these games with 60 rushing yards and less catches, but it balances for me.
Okay. Eric, same boat pretty much for you as well then?
Yeah, pretty much. Actually, I've got a note on Breece Hall that's a little bit less to do with this trade and just more to do with the fact that they really seem to lock in on featuring him at least more prominently in the ground game out of the backfield last night. So maybe that is a sign of things to come. But yeah, any volume downswing will be more than made up for with a bit of scoring upside.
Shout out Breece Hall as well. Hit a couple alt rushing totals on him last week, so was happy about that. That was a nice little win for the kid on Monday night there. For the Raiders here, for me, I think it just primarily affects Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker a little bit as well. Brock Bowers, to me, was already in the tight end one conversation rest of season. It's really him and Kelsey for me. I'd love to hear if you guys have it any differently. Jacoby Myers, I think, comes in back into the high-end wide receiver 3 range for me. And then Trey Tucker's a guy I probably have on my bench. Any difference from you here, Eric?
Nothing of significance, right? I think those are about the right ranges for these guys. I was with you and am with you that Brock Bowers is firmly in the tight end one conversation. I'm a little bit worried to see what his reality looks like with a bit more defensive attention. Not so much to where I think it's going to make him fall outside of the top 12 at the position by anything.
He's already had that though. I
um,
feel like the last couple of weeks because Adams hasn't been out there.
Yeah, he has, and he's been kind of hit or miss, right? So it's something where I'm keeping an eye on it for a bit of a larger sample size. But point being, like I don't think the bottom falls out to where he's not being started as a top 12 tight end every week, right? Really more of a consideration around upside more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Will you like Jacoby Myers, like Trey Tucker?
I'm a little less excited about Trey Tucker. I think he is kind of what people want. People want him to be Jacoby Myers, wide receiver 2 with Adams there. I don't think we can see. I mean, we saw him as wide receiver 1 last week and go catchless. Obviously, it's just 1 week. O'Connell loves Jacoby Myers, so I am pretty excited to see his role expand a little bit. And Bowers is consensus tight end 1 for me. You said him and Kelsey. For me, it's him and McBride and Kelsey. But Bowers, I just traded for him. Very excited to see him as tight end 1.
Would you redraft or dynasty?
Both.
Oh, can you give me the redraft one? Can you tell us what you have to give up for Brock Bowers these days?
Today I traded Dobbins and Brian Thomas for Brock Bowers and Brian Robinson. So I was excited about that. I think Robinson and Dobbins are same tier. Brian Thomas, I needed a tight end desperately, so
and Were you pretty good at wide receiver, I take it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Good to know. Good to know there. We got some IBT family members checking in. What's up, Albert? Saying good evening, IBT. Albert. Good evening to you, Albert. We also have Michael checking in with us. What's going on, Michael? Good to see you, man. We also have Steve checking in with us from the Root Beers and Popcorn channel over there. What's up, Steve? Good to see you. That's dedication there. Steve, even on his night off, is checking in with us. We appreciate it, man. We also have Ben in the chat. Brock Bowers is tight end 1, and then the rest of the group is tight end purgatory. I don't know, man. I'm still okay. I think Michael lays it out well here. Bowers, McBride, and then Kelsey. Like, I think that's probably. Will, you're probably about this. You're probably because McBride was your tight end 1 preseason, wasn't he?
Yeah, and honestly, he still would be had Adams not been traded. But I've been going back and forth between those two all year.
Eric, anyone else you would put in that mix, or you cool with this like top tier here?
I think that's about right. I mean, Sam Laporta should be part of that conversation. Although he was really only getting it done early, only got it done last week with a single huge play, which is hard to repeat, right? Yeah. But I think that the tier break is really more around after those top 4 than anything else.
Okay. One more news note here, and it's not about Cam Akers. He was traded, by the way. I didn't think we need to spend a lot of time on it, but traded back to the Vikings. So shout out Cam Akers. Meanwhile, Amari Cooper and a 6th round pick have been traded to the Bills for a 3rd round and 7th round pick. Coop, he leaves Cleveland after a wide receiver 10 and a wide receiver 20 season. He has 53 targets on the season. That is top 12 in the NFL. However, 30% of those have been uncatchable targets, leading him to be just wide receiver 36 in PPR formats. He joins this team in Buffalo, guys. We know they desperately need an X wide receiver since shipping off Stephon Diggs. They've been rolling out Mac Hollins and MVS all season long. So where would you rank Amari Cooper here? The de facto wide receiver 1, we're assuming, for Buffalo moving forward here, Eric?
I don't know if we can necessarily assume that. I mean, maybe for Buffalo, but my guess is that we're gonna see a mess of guys that are like floating between like 30 and 60% of snaps every single week. It's kind of what they're already doing, and they just went out and added Amari Cooper on top.
Oh, you think you don't think he's gonna get more than 60% of snaps eventually?
I mean, I would like to go to there. I want that to be a thing, right? I'm just kind of going based on what Joe Brady has shown us in his time as the offensive coordinator.
I just think that's because he doesn't have a bunch of dogs out there, you know? He's got Shakir and that's
Stephon Diggs for a third of it? 40% of his tenure as the play caller, right? Like,
true.
I don't know. It's an open question, right? But Amari Cooper certainly steps in as the most talented and capable and at least productive at the NFL level receiver in this room. He should earn the most targets and more playing time. I don't know if he necessarily will. For me, he's kind of that like back end wide receiver 2, top end wide receiver 3 conversation most weeks.
Okay. Does this make you want to get uninvested with any of these other wide receivers we've been holding on to, Will? The Khalil Shakirs of the world, the Keon Coleman's of the world?
Definitely Keon Coleman. I do agree that it's going to be a bit of a mess, and I think I think, you see the name Amari Cooper, you see Josh Allen at quarterback. I think everyone will get a little overly excited about it. I mean, I posted a video with wide receivers tumbling down my fantasy rankings after Sunday, and I had him in there. Now he gets traded, and everyone's coming at me in the comments about how amazing he's going to be now. So he's obviously not a faller after this trade. I'm
The
a
perceived
Khalil
value is
Shakir.
at least higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a Khalil Shakir owner. And I still believe that he's going to be heavily involved in the offense. And I think there's going to be plenty of weeks where Cooper doesn't finish as the top producer. I mean, we saw, not that they're the same player whatsoever, but we saw Stephon Diggs in the Joe Brady offense. I think it's going to be messy all around.
Okay. Kincaid, like you're still rolling Kincaid out there, it's kind of just, I want to say almost an auto start just because of the position that you got, 12 guys you got to roll out every single week in your standard 12 league team. My question for you, Will, would also be, where do you put Amari Cooper rest of the season? Like, to me, he's right in that wide receiver 18-20 range, but I think maybe I'm the high guy between us. Is that the case?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to adjust my rankings since the trade happened, which I'll get to tomorrow. But my immediate thought when seeing the trade was low end wide receiver 2, so kind of 20 to 24 for me.
Okay. On this note as well, Eric, are you interested anymore in Jerry Jeudy, Dave Njoku? Do they get maybe a bump in Cleveland? I don't know if you saw that video that went out last night, but it was the like rendition of Mr. Brightside, but I'm Mr. Haslam. It was a banger. It was an absolute banger. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. Just kind of detailing the journey of Mr. Haslam there in Cleveland.
Man, I'm gonna have to go seek that out. I missed it. It's hard to say, right? Like, Jerry Jeudy, for by hook or by crook, has actually been having an okay-ish season. It's hard to be truly objective with just how horrific the quarterback play has been for the Browns. But point being, I've kind of liked Jerry Jeudy as a 2 more than a 1, and now he's thrust back into the 1 role, and I don't know how that's going to play out for him. So proceeding with a bit of caution on Jerry Jeudy, right? Like, I'll move him from like wide receiver 48 to like 43, 44. David Njoku is interesting, right? He returned from missing like 3 or 4 games. Last week in particular, he saw 7 targets, caught 5 of them for 31. That doesn't sound like a lot in the year of our Lord 2024 at the tight end position. That is very much so in the starting conversation. It's at least better than the guys that are catching 2 passes for 30 yards. So maybe he sees a little bit more volume. I mean, ultimately, for any of these guys to really be viable from a fantasy standpoint, you're hoping for a quarterback change more than anything else.
If you had to drop one, Will, you have to drop Dave Njoku or Jerry Jeudy this week. Who are you dropping in a vacuum?
I would drop Jeudy. Jeudy actually was dropped in a couple of my leagues Sunday, Monday, and now I'm sure he'll be atop the waiver wire. But for me, like, I have McBride in a 3 receiver league. And I picked up Njoku because somebody dropped him, and I had him on my roster for a couple of weeks, and he was still out. And I was like, honestly, like, I'm not going to start him over McBride. I'm fine. And then a ton of injuries happened. I'm like, now I could see Njoku getting in my flex a little bit. Like, he goes out there with a 7-catch, 60 yards and a touchdown. He might be climbing up the ranks.
Yeah, he's going to get a pretty big target share, that's for sure. All right, though, guys. Awesome day in the NFL. Cool time to be just interested in the sport and having fantasy football, NFL gambling happenings around it as well. So let's go ahead and turn the page here, though, in the program and open it up here with a little between bets.
Between bets. Between bets.
if you're watching on YouTube, you just saw the bumper there, and it had a clip of Vegas. Will, you were just in Vegas for a little boys trip here this past weekend. How was that, man? And what is your number one place, the 101 of your Vegas rankings?
Man, we went. It was a great trip. Mostly just watched my friends lose all their money gambling. Didn't do too much. I did more sports book gambling than
There you
gambling.
go.
The best place there has to be this club we went to, Omnia. We saw Tiesto play. It was one of the best nights of my life.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's I like Tiesto actually. Wasted. Do you know that song, Will? Are you old enough to know
Oh,
that song?
absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Okay. That was one of my favorites in high school growing up. So, Eric, I know you got married in Vegas too. So, Vegas, a very big place in your heart as well. What's your 101 of Vegas?
Oh man, I
Other
don't
than
even
the
know if I'm
chapel.
prepared for this. Yeah, so you're right. In case my darling wife is watching out there, it was very clearly the wedding venue where I got married in Las
Yeah.
Vegas. If that's the 1A is probably the Bellagio poker room. I could set up shop in there for days.
Okay. All right. Like to hear that. We got Sam checking in the chat. What's up, Sam? Good to see you as always, man. Guys, I want to go ahead and turn it over to let's go Will first. Will, what do you got for us, man, here in the NFL futures betting market, my friend?
My first one is going to be trying to narrow down the MVPs, and the top guys are the Lamar, the Jaden Daniels is probably up there, but been saying it for years, and maybe my answer has something to do with him just being due, but it's Josh Allen, plus 650. I think the Bills have a very, very good chance to be atop of the AFC East with the Tua injury. The Jets, I know they got Adams, but they've been having their own struggles on both sides of the ball. Interim head coach. I think they'll win that division, and I think they'll contend up for the 1 seed with the Chiefs, who they're scraping by and winning games, but the Chiefs don't look like the Chiefs right now. And Josh Allen, the one thing that's his problem every year for winning MVP is having 15 plus turnovers. And right now he's got 8 touchdowns and 0 picks. They just traded for Amari Cooper, which I just said it was a little overhyped, but I do think it's going to help this offense out a lot. But for a guy that's not turning the ball over, and I think he always has a chance to lead the league in touchdowns, I think it's a great value.
18. I didn't know he had that many touchdowns and no picks. That is insane. That is, I think, plus 650. I'm going to be honest. I was looking at the MVP market earlier today as well, in preparation for this show, and I didn't lay anything down, but I think if I was going to, it might be Josh Allen. So, good on you, Will. I like this play a lot. Eric, I know you're kind of staying in this market as well. So if it's not Josh Allen, who do you think is potentially the best value at NFL MVP odds right now?
Yeah, definitely don't mind that Josh Allen call whatsoever. I'm gonna go with something a little bit more time tested, in so much as he's already won 2 of these things, and that is reigning MVP Lamar Jackson sitting all the way down at plus 550. I was kind of surprised to see him a couple of notches down the board based on his production. I'm going to make a pretty boring argument, which is to say that this year he's actually, through 6 weeks, performing by a fairly wide margin much better than he was last year at this point,
true.
where he won the MVP. So, I mean, simply put, like, if he's not the betting favorite, it's probably some value on the board, and I love gobbling up this value, right? So I do think that this version of the Ravens is very much so here to stay. I think we're going to see them competing in and winning big games all the way down the stretch run at the point of the year where, we have head-to-head matchups in week 13, 14, whatever it might be. That is kind of like the deciding factor in these postseason awards. I think the Ravens are still going to be winning. I mean, statistically, I don't even think I know that that Lamar Jackson is on a pace to put up stats that are well beyond the pale of what he's posted in his prior MVP campaigns.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great point you make. I don't even think the Ravens have played their best ball yet. I think that's kind of the scary thing too. The only thing I would say maybe that's going against Lamar here this season, and that he has Derrick Henry in the backfield. And Derrick Henry, we talked about it last week. We have some season future props on Henry. I know a couple of us do here on this program, and like he's already well on his way of hitting those. So I think that's the only thing kind of going against Lamar Jackson there is Derrick Henry being in the backfield. I want to stay with the Ravens, though, with my first bet of the night here. And it's an AFC North dual forecast. This is Ravens and Steelers plus 100 at ESPN Bet. In this bet, I am taking the Ravens and Steelers to finish 1-2 in the division in any order. It doesn't matter if the Ravens win or the Steelers win. It just has to be them at the top of the division. Both sit at 4-2 currently. The Ravens currently have the fourth best scoring offense as well. And the Steelers, they have the second best scoring defense. These look like two playoff teams to me. Meanwhile, the Browns are kind of, being the Browns 1-5, selling off pieces right now. And the Bengals are the only thing that screws this bet up, boys. They're 2-4. And while I don't like to bet against Joe Burrow actively, at the same time, they have a bottom 7 scoring defense here. And I don't think you can win games against people like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes in the AFC with that type of defense. So for me, the Steelers and the Ravens, they both have bottom half strength of schedules for the remainder of the season as well. So I'm going to go ahead and back up the truck here for, you're paying some juice. But I think I'm going to lay a couple units here on plus 100 at ESPN Bet, AFC North dual forecast, Ravens and Steelers.
I was very surprised when I saw that on the show sheet that's pretty good value if you ask me, because I know that there's Bengals. The Bengals, they're 2-4. They can always figure it out. They always start off slow. Their offense is pumping right now. And then you look at the Steelers, I'm like, they're 4-2. The only thing that would worry me, man, what if this Russell Wilson starting now, which I don't understand, by the way, what if he comes in and he's like Kenny Pickett or something? It's just a drop down from Justin Fields. But the thing is, especially with the 4-2 head start, preseason, I had the Steelers over the Bengals, because if you don't think that the Steelers are going to improve all around in the offseason and still not get 9 to 10 wins, you're crazy. They're getting 9 or 10 wins. They're probably going to sneak into the playoffs. And I think they have a way better shot of doing that than the Bengals, especially with the lead start.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like I sat down and I started taking notes on this particular wager before the Russell Wilson news was even announced. And I'm scared. I'm a little scared, I'm going to be honest. But someone said it best to me. Maybe they're just going out there trying to do a little showcase game with Russ, get him out there, maybe get some trade value. But I think it's a terrible way to manage the locker room if Mike Tomlin is serious about contending this season. So I'm with you there. Eric, any thoughts on the AFC North here?
No, I've actually got a pretty similar kind of knee-jerk reaction that Will did, right? Like seeing this, granted at even money, I thought it was kind of valuable, right? Like if you take a look at the Ravens to win the AFC North by themselves, they're minus 310. So you've got a huge head start with their record compared to the bottom dwellers of this division, and you're now essentially getting that same bet, all intents and purposes, for even money, right? So I think it's a really interesting way to kind of attack the market and to get some value. Something goes sideways, I mean, to Will's point, right? Like the Steelers are absolutely going to be a competitive team year in and year out, this year included. So you kind of have a couple of ways to get their back door as well.
Fuck the Bengals, baby. Fuck the Bengals. I've never actually rooted against the Bengals super hard for being a division foe, because they've always, at least growing up, we're kind of like our little brother, that you just kind of beat up on. And but hey, I'm gonna root against them here, and I'm gonna take the side of the Ravens, the division rival as well. So let's go Lurs, let's go Ravens here. Will, back to you here with your second favorite bet for the current NFL futures betting market.
So I wanted another long shot one, but it was tough for me to pick one. I went a little more basic, not really. I think the NFC North is one of the best. I think it is the best division in football right now. All those teams are flying, and I think the Lions are everyone's expected pick to win the division. But I'm gonna stick with the with the Minnesota Vikings. Both them and the Lions are plus 140, so take your pick. But for me, it comes down to the Vikings they're tough, or they're through their tough part of their schedule. They took down the Niners, they took down the Texans. They've already beaten the Packers once. Obviously, they'll have them again, and even the Jets. Now they play each other this week, so Lions win. Maybe I look like an idiot next week, but you look at the Lions schedule, and they still got to play the Packers twice, the Vikings twice, the Texans, the Bills, the Bears, the 49ers. They have a lot harder of
Wow.
a schedule.
Wow.
The Vikings are already, I mean, at least right now, they got the 1-game lead on them, but they are pumping they have one of the best defenses in the NFL from a statistical standpoint. The depth, obviously, Justin Jefferson, but the depth outside of that, they're getting Hawkinson back, who hasn't even been playing. Jordan Addison's back and healthy, and Aaron Jones, and hey, Cam Akers now. Sam Darnold's playing at an MVP level. I mean, until they have this insane collapse and having an easier schedule on the Lions, who are also balling out, I think that the Vikings are an underrated pick here.
Yeah, I wonder what you could get them pre-flop here before the season even started. Were they last in the odds, you think? They probably
100%.
were.
I bet they were.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
they
it's
were.
kind of tough to swallow plus 140 for it now, but a winner is a winner at this point in the season, so I don't hate it from that standpoint. Eric, over to you here with your second favorite bet that we should be looking at currently in the futures betting market.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch back to the awards. I'll stick here with the NFC North. I'm going to go to a different team, the Chicago Bears, and the recently made over Matt Eberflus to win Coach of the Year at plus 2,200. That's exactly what made this bet jump off the page for me. If you think about the history of this Coach of the Year award, usually it's the guy that takes what's presumed to be a dumper of a team and makes them competitive. The Bears are sitting here at 4-2 right now. Yes, they have a pretty tough stretch of the schedule in front of them, but already we're seeing signs from Caleb Williams that he's getting his feet under him. He's getting a little bit more accustomed to the NFL level. This offense is starting to get into a bit of a rhythm to go with a defense that, dating back to about this time last year, the midpoint of last season, was really one of the more formidable in all of the NFL. So I think this team has a lot of pieces to be competitive, and this is a team that was taking the first overall pick, although it was not necessarily theirs this time or at the end of last season, right? So I think the gap between expectation and reality is really what's going to drive some steam towards Matt Eberflus. But this price is just wild. This should be like a plus 1,000 type of line. So to get him at plus 2,200 is something I got to jump over.
Is KOC the betting favorite right now, Eric, in this market?
KOC is currently the betting favorite. Yeah.
Okay.
He is sitting at plus 140. They're same odds to win the NFC North. So if he wins that division, he's probably winning the Coach of the Year award.
Yeah, I think 22-1, especially, I don't know what it is over at FanDuel, but that's where I would place this one, because there's a chance that if you place this at FanDuel and the Bears do make the playoffs and Eberflus has a real shot of winning this, you're getting a cash out regardless. So you could have money on the table. Appreciate that one from you there, Eric. Also appreciate the $20 super chat here from Didi. What's up, Didi? Thanks so much. We appreciate it greatly. I know Didi's been in the middle of a move out of state there, so hope everything's going good with that, our friend. Michael saying there should be 3 playoff teams to come out of the NFC North. The Bears might be a year away. Maybe, but they might be there too. The defense is legit. Like, we can't look past the defense. And what we saw from Caleb Williams, I know it was against pretty cheeks Jaguars defense over there in London, but still, like, that's nothing to snob at. I think at the same time, boys, just because like he was traveling overseas, it was in a foreign environment, and he still, I think, played very well as well. So yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead. I'll move to my next bet here, and it is the Miami Dolphins to make the playoffs, plus 180. This over at DraftKings. You find this like plus 140, plus 130 at other shops. I am not ready to throw the towel in, gentlemen, on a Miami team that has Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, you name it. They're only 2-3. They're 1 game out of that final wild card spot. Tua will reportedly be back in week 8. They have the easiest strength of schedule left on the entire NFL calendar. That includes the next 6 weeks games against the Colts, Cardinals, Bills, Rams, Raiders, Patriots. I think they could honestly go 5-1 in that stretch. The Colts own that final wild card spot, and they could get them knocked out here this week in a head-to-head matchup. They're also getting Bradley Chubb back here very soon as well. So plus 180. I'm not throwing in the towel with Dolphins yet. I don't know if you boys have. I'm going out. I'm trying to trade for Waddle and Hill everywhere I can, and Achane. And I'm also trying to lay a little money down here on the Fins. All right. And we got Michael saying, thanks for all the hard work doing the show. Good night, guys. Have a great week 7. Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it, brother. All right. I do want to throw out just, I feel kind of like, I don't know what the right word for it, but you guys gave out some like longer odds ones. So I want to throw out just one college football one. Love some feedback from you guys if you have any, or the chat as well. BYU to win the Big 12 right now, 5-1. I know we're shifting into college a little bit here. Big 12 wide open right now this year. There's nobody really sticking out of that conference. 9th ranked Iowa State, they're the betting favorite currently right now. 1 loss Kansas State, they're second. Books aren't buying into this BYU team. Currently 6-0 though against the spread and straight up as well. They are beating the crap out of people. They beat Big 12 opponents Kansas State, Arizona by a combined score of 79-28. They got Jake Retzloff. He's kind of the real deal. You'll probably hear about him here in scouting for fantasy football leagues in just a couple of months. Provo, Utah, tough place to play as well. So I like Utah here, boys. I think they got a easier schedule rest of the way than K-State and Iowa State. So I don't know if you guys have been watching much Big 12 ball, but not a lot to report there. But Utah slowly rising up the rankings there.
Yeah, BYU. I mean, they've got themselves atop the standings, right? So to get this type of price on the team that is already in the pole position is always interesting. And like you mentioned, looking down the stretch run of the schedule, not a ranked team among them in terms of their upcoming opponents. So that is definitely a favorable position to find yourself in, especially at 5-1, right? That feels like it's probably more of like a 3.5-1 type of line.
They're no Purdue, Will. They're no Purdue, but they're 5-1.
Yeah, no, we don't need to talk about Purdue.
Dude, that was probably a heartbreaker for you this past weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we deserved one win.
Shot out of a cannon, though. Shot out of a cannon. All of a sudden, they're putting points on the board. Probably felt good for once.
QB controversy now.
Okay. All right. Well, boys, that'll do the betting segment of the show. We're gonna go ahead and transition to a little bit of waivers a week early here in the scope.
I have the stars in my sights.
Requesting permission to engage.
In the scope.
All right, in the scope, this is our waivers a week early segment. All right, Eric, going a little dark mode on. We got dark Eric for in the scope tonight.
I was the unlocked character there for a second.
So we're gonna be talking about some mainstream waiver wire targets quickly, and then we'll get into ones you can pick up after waivers run here for really no fab. This has been a great segment for us so far this season. We've gotten you guys. Will, he shouted out Jalen Tolbert earlier this season. We've talked about Wan'Dale Robinson, Juju Smith-Schuster. We've saved you guys fab. We're going to continue to do it here at the quarterback position, guys, for these mainstream targets. It is Sam Darnold for me. I think he was really the only person of note. Any other quarterbacks for you, Eric, that you think like, hey, if you're really in need of scooping up a quarterback off the waiver wire that we're not going to talk about in the scope, that you think maybe you should go out and grab? Because Darnold is really it for me. Only roster in 45% of ESPN leagues.
If you're in Superflex or in dire straits, which with only 2 teams on bye this week, it's probably unlikely, but for weeks in the future, I wouldn't mind speculating with Bo Nix, right? He's seemingly getting a little bit more comfortable in this offense, and at the NFL level can do a little bit with his legs, right? Kind of like a West Coast Temu version of Daniel Jones. So that kind of tells you all you need to know about what you're getting. But a guy that, potentially could fill in one of these like Buymageddon weeks where you're down, 6, 7, 8 guys.
I almost made him my in the scope target, but what do you think about Drake May, Will? Do you like Drake May at all, or would you prefer Bo Nix, like Eric alluded to?
I was thinking, man, I can't think of anyone. I thought of Nick's a little bit too before he said that because he's been figuring out. I was looking at his game log for Thursday night bets this week, and just a brutal first couple of weeks, but he's been getting it together. He's got 5 touchdowns the past 3 weeks. He's got some rushing upside. May comes out 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. To me, if I was gonna like pick one of them up and start them, it would probably be entirely matchup dependent because there's definitely teams where I can't trust Drake May in my lineup. But this week against the Jaguars might be a sneaky start.
Yeah. Honestly, that's kind of. I have him in a couple super flex dynasty leagues that might be rolling him out there here. So, yeah, at the running back position for the mainstream targets, Tyrone Tracy Jr. Again, I keep kicking myself that we didn't talk about him in the scope a couple weeks ago. Tank Bigsby still out there, 44% rostered. Travis Etienne banged up here at the hamstring injury. Antonio Gibson, he was the guy Steve put in the scope earlier in the season, 42% rostered. Alexander Madison could be a bigger part of the Las Vegas Raiders without Adams moving forward as well. Ray Davis had a big Monday night. Hope you bet on him. Hope you potentially already added him in your fantasy leagues. Tyler Algier, Ty Chandler, Isaac Rendo, Sean Tucker. If we see any more missed time out of Rachaad White there as well. Trey Sermon and Emmanuel Wilson are those running back mainstream targets. Will, is there one running back that sticks out to you here as, hey, this is a guy I wouldn't mind going to spend fab up on?
Well, these three, Tyrone Tracy, Tank Bigsby, and Tyler Algier, those are the guys, 40+%. None of those guys are on any of my waiver wires. So definitely those guys need to be owned. I actually traded Tyrone Tracy. I had 2 people trying to trade me for him.
Ooh.
So not waiver wire. He's got trade value in my leagues. But one of these
What are people
lower
offering?
guys,
What are people sending out for him?
he was a throw-in in a trade I did, but it was like they weren't going to do it unless I threw in Tyrone Tracy. So I'm like, all right, you can have the elite handcuff, I guess. Singletary will ruin his upside when he's in. But I really wish I could go nuts on Ty Chandler here. I think Cam Akers may be a little bit annoying if Aaron Jones misses time, but I've been holding Ty Chandler on my roster all season because we saw him get an opportunity, a couple of good weeks he gave us. I remember saying to start him last year, and he put up over 100 yards and a touchdown in one game. He's got a couple of bad efficiency games, which I'm sure is why the Cam Akers trade happened, but I've been waiting for Aaron Jones to get hurt because he misses a few games every year. So I've been stashing him, ready to pump him out in my flex. But maybe pumping the brakes a little bit with Cam Akers, but I would roster him.
Okay. Kind of on this same note here, Eric, we have a waiver wire running back question from Jason. How would you rank these running backs? He would be dropping Jerome Ford for one of them, so that's something to keep in mind. Ty Chandler, Kamani Vidal, Jalen Warren, Ray Davis, Tyrone Tracy. How would you rank those guys rest of the season here, and would you drop Jerome Ford for any of them?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't feel so comfortable with Nick Chubb just stepping in and being shades of himself to where I want to go dropping Jerome Ford necessarily, right? Like I want to see how those splits look. I want to see if, I don't know, the Browns are blowing this thing up and maybe they move on from a guy like Nick Chubb, right? So too many open questions to really rush to drop Jerome Ford. Of this lot of players, I would probably target Tyrone Tracy, followed by Jalen Warren. Ray Davis looked amazing. He is very much so an implied value guy. You can say the same thing for Kamani Vidal, who, for how amazing he looked on that catch that he should have been tackled on, he was still outsnapped like 3.5 to 1. Ty Chandler will already detailed his concerns there with Minnesota bringing in Cam Akers. So I would go Tracy followed by Jalen Warren.
Yep, I'm in pretty lockstep with you there, honestly, as well. Um, let's go ahead and get to some of the mainstream wide receivers here. Josh Downs, Juju Smith-Schuster. We've been, yelling these guys' names for a couple weeks here, so make sure you're picking them up if they are still somehow available in your leagues. Demario Douglas, kind of the darling this week. I wouldn't mind spending up a little bit for Demario Douglas. Looks like he has a really good rapport there with Drake May. Allen Lazard, Christian Watson. They've both found themselves under 50% roster. I think Lazard probably less appealing now since the Adams news. Romeo Doubs, Jalen Tolbert. Will talked about him earlier this season. Xavier Legette. I know Eric was higher on him a couple weeks ago as well. Found his way into the end zone this past week. Trey Tucker, Jordan Whittington, Quentin Johnston, Tutu Atwell, Darius Slayton. Eric, is there one that jumps off the page for you if you needed a wide receiver that you would be going and spending up fab if they are still available in your league?
Yeah, there's several. Shout out my boy Xavier Legette. Love to see him getting his feet under him at the NFL level.
Yeah.
Um, of the list here, though, I think a lot of it's going to depend on circumstance for your team. If you need floor, I would probably be inclined to lead towards Romeo Dobbs. Obviously, you're going to pay a little bit more than you otherwise would because he's coming off a 2-touchdown game, and so his price is going to be inflated. If you need upside, I would look towards Christian Watson. This is my way of saying that I'm very bullish on the Packers passing offense. Jordan Love is on a 17-game pace for 51 passing touchdowns. We knew
Holy
that he
shit! Are
threw
you
to the end zone a ton, but right
Holy
now,
shit.
if he had played 17 games, he'd be pacing towards 51 on the year. So we know that the touchdown upside there is prolific. I want to get into that offense wherever I can.
Wow, that is absurd. That is an absurd pace. My good. I mean, he had a pretty good pace going last year towards the end of it too. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not a total surprise, but Josh Downs is probably my favorite. Will just, I mean, looking at the pure output we've seen so far, but maybe that's not the case just because there are question marks with A-Rich coming back.
I keep on the last 3 waiver wire videos that I've put out. I had Josh Downs in the first one, and then the last few, I keep getting Josh Downs comments, and I mean, he has not been on any waiver wire, and I guess my league's maybe a little deeper bench, but
Yeah.
um, I
Same
think
here.
he's a fringe top 35 wide receiver for me. I don't his volume, his target share, 100% not going to be quite the same with Richardson coming back. He's averaging 12 completions per game, so that's unfortunate. But there are going to be games, and what we're seeing from the Colts offense right now is Michael Pittman sprinkled in some decent games here and there, pretty much all with Joe Flacco. Alec Pierce is going to have a game here or there with 100-something yards and a touchdown off of one catch.
Yeah.
And Josh Downs is just getting all these little 5-yard out, 6, 7, 8 catches. He's the guy in the Colts receiving core that I want to own. I think he has the most upside. Touchdowns are going to be all over the place. He's going to get his, but the receptions, he's going to be a PPR monster. He's like Pop Douglas last year with way more upside, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's honestly been crazy, dude. Like even like Downs has been super nice and super consistent, but like even AD Mitchell is out there running really nice routes as well right now. So yeah, I think I'm with you on Downs that I'd rather have him over Pittman right now. I mean, I think value wise, probably still get more for Pittman in trade, but I'd rather roster and play down. So yeah, definitely there with you. At the tight end position, Cade Otton, Hunter Henry, Colby Parkinson, 3 names just to note there. Eric, I don't think I can go back to Hunter Henry. I think we've talked about him every week on this show. I don't think I can go back, even though he does have the new quarterback there. It's, we've called him the Toxic X. That's kind of been his label here on the program. Now he's kind of like if your Toxic X just went and got like some plastic surgery. Are you any more interested in the Hunter Henry experience there? Would you rather go Cade Otton or Colby Parkinson if you needed a tight end dart throw?
Man, the Toxic S went out and got a BBL. Not really, right? Like these are all guys that are most added one week and then the most cut the next week, right? Like
Yeah, every
you're
week.
literally just kind of like on the Ferris wheel here. Um, I mean, of the lot, I feel like Kate Otton's baseline is a little bit more stable. So I guess I would lean that way. But
Yeah.
really, if you're making this decision, you're really more looking at individual matchups week over week.
Yep, I think that's a good way to put it. Let's go ahead and get to our in the scope targets here. These are the players you can target after the waivers run, potentially even later in the week. Will, I'll throw it over to you first, man. Who's your first in the scope target here for week number 7?
So I wanted to go pretty deep with this one. I'm going with Bub Means of the New Orleans Saints. He was
Ooh.
tied for first in targets last week with Alvin Kamara in this Rattler Saints offense. Carr's going to be out a few weeks. Olave is definitely not playing this week, and we'll see if he has a Malik Neighbors situation where he's out again. And Shaheed is banged up as well. So I think that he's going to have plenty of opportunity. Don't get me wrong. This is going to be an Alvin Kamara 12 target game. Taysom Hill's probably going to get into the end zone if he's healthy. It's going to be those two guys. But if there's going to be a receiver that I'm going to be keeping my eye on in deeper leagues, I think Bub Means has a decent chance to surprise people. I mean, he's 0.1% owned and didn't even make this list we had on our show sheet for in the scope. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think Bub Means is kind of interesting a little bit here, Will, especially 5th round guy coming out of Pittsburgh as well. Had some good games here in the past year, and obviously they like him enough that they threw him out there. And there's the other guy, the other young guy running some routes for the Saints this week. I can't even think of his name. Yeah, who I think he was on the field before Bub Means was, but Bub Means made the bigger impact right away. So that's kind of what you're looking for here. And he might be a guy, Will, as you kind of allude to, has a little chemistry with Spencer Rattler there. So Bub Means, I think if you need like a serious dart throw, no one's going to be going after him. This is really in the scope. It's like a 500-foot target, but I like the call there. Eric, I'll hand it over to you here with more thoughts on the Saints pass catchers.
Yeah, I'm going to stick right in this same game. Like Will mentioned, Chris Olave, very unlikely to participate in this Thursday night game with a concussion. Rashid Shaheed also banged up. So I'm going to speculate in the tight end market for the New Orleans Saints. Go with Juwan Johnson, a player who's been coming on a little bit more here of late, has at least 3 targets in each of his last 3 games, which doesn't sound like a ton, but this is a player that wasn't getting looks and was barely on the field for like 40% of snaps as of like week 2. So to see his snap share walk up to the point where he's north of 80% in his last 2 weeks, hitting a season high watermark of 48 receiving yards and 11% air yard share last week. He seems like he's getting reintegrated into this offense at a point where they have literally no pass catchers available to them, right? So
Yeah.
I think he's someone that is probably not going to get a whole lot of steam in terms of interest from a waiver claim or fab bidding standpoint. You can probably sneak him in for $1 or maybe even grab him first thing tomorrow morning. But a player that the Saints will desperately need to play a role in their very, very thinned out receiving core this week.
It's a great point. I've always had a soft spot for Juwan Johnson, former Penn State Nittany Lion. Actually played receiver at Penn State because we don't know how to use tight ends until Tyler Warren got there, of course. But yeah, I feel like in general, Juwan Johnson, we saw the breakout a couple years ago from a touchdown perspective where he was scoring a ton of touchdowns. What did he have that year? What was that, 2022? He had like 9 or 10 touchdowns, something crazy. And then I feel like we haven't really seen it since. He was banged up coming into the season last year, kind of overshadowed by Taysom Hill at that position as well. So with so many people banged up, I think maybe this is the time we can get reinvested with Juwan Johnson, and you're getting reinvested for nothing. So don't hate the call there at all.
So Seth, you got Foster Moreau, right?
No Foster Moreau.
All Saints all day.
Yeah, I can no Foster Moreau for me. Maybe A.T. Perry if they didn't cut his ass. I don't know if you guys saw that, but they cut his ass a couple months ago. Eric saying 7 in 2022. Okay, that was okay. 7 touchdowns ain't bad for him. I will stay kind of gross here though, and a player we've talked about in the past, but I think is honestly I'm kind of excited about. I'm gonna put in just like a little, $1, $0 fab bid here tonight for it's Noah Brown, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders. Unrostered in over 99% of leagues right now. The Commanders are the number 3 scoring offense and the number 5 teams in yards per game as well. You want pieces of that. And we kind of said coming into the season, could it be Luke McCaffrey who could maybe be interesting? Could it be Dynamic Brown? Once we saw this Jahan Dotson trade to Philadelphia. Well, it looks like Noah Brown might be that guy. He was number 2 in snap count this past week with 64% of the snaps behind only Terry McLaurin. He led the team in targets with 8. He also got a red zone look in there. Say what you want about Noah Brown, but the guy had 3 games last year as a wide receiver 1 for fantasy football. He had some good runs for the Texans, including 2 games over 150 yards. He plays Carolina this week, the worst scoring defense in all football. And then the Giants 2 weeks from now in week 9 as well. I think he could be a guy rest of season, honestly. And I think after this week, everyone is going to be shouting Noah Brown's name from the mountaintop. So I'm going to get invested now for little to nothing, boys.
Yeah, like the call a lot, right? Trying to figure out who the 1A was going to be in this Washington offense has sort of been a plight of the entire season. But now that we've got a full, 6 weeks of sample pretty consistently, Noah Brown is the one that is out there the second most. Even looking back to last week in particular, he had a higher target share than Terry McLaurin himself. So I think it's pretty clear that these are the 2 that are going to be most heavily involved. And to get him, at a point where I don't think you're going to have to spend any money for him. And heading into this matchup in particular, right? Terry McLaurin is going to be shadowed by J.C. Horn this week. That leaves our guy Noah Brown in the very gentle care of Mike Jackson, which is a matchup that quarterbacks have been attacking all season long. Right, he's one of the most targeted corners in the league, so you'll be getting him right before his blow-up game, which is name of the game here in the scope, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Any love from you for little Noah Brown action, Will?
Yeah, no, that's I had him last year for his few good games he had when no Diggs and Dell was injured. Did pretty well on my flex, so I had my eye on him. When the Jahan Dotson trade happened, and everyone's saying Ben Sinnott, Zach Ertz, and Luke McCaffrey are. Never heard Noah Brown's name, but he's always been underrated. He sneaky had 3-4 catches, 30-40 yards on the season. I feel like his name would be out there a lot more had he maybe sprinkled in a touchdown or 2. So a good matchup for sure, though.
Yeah, I'm going to throw one honorary one out there. I won't give any really thoughts on it, but Audric Estime might be a guy that you should maybe consider throwing a speculative roster on. He did get on the field finally for Denver here. And Denver this week, whether it's Davante maybe going out and throwing a little buy low offer on him, or Jaleel McLaughlin or Esmeen, I'm not sure who it's going to be. But the Saints just got ran on for 200 plus yards on from Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. So I think maybe we see the Denver backfield do something similar here this next week. So just something I want to throw out there. Let's go ahead though, gentlemen. We'll round out the show here with a little bit of from the forum. Make sure you guys drop your questions if we can help you out at all here in this segment powered by the Fantasy Football Advice Network.
If you're up, stuck, thinking about what to do, here at In Between, we got advice for you. Back and forth all day, trying to pick the play. Let's hear what them boys here had to say. Presented by the Fantasy Football Advice Network.
All right. Thank you to the Fantasy Football Advice Network, as always, for powering this segment. We greatly, greatly appreciate their partnership, as always, here at the IBT podcast. And I wanted to bring up this question. We already kind of touched on the Jets, but I thought it was a good question that was asked over there on the network. Who benefits most after the Jets move? And I specifically want to talk about Aaron Rodgers. Does he become someone who maybe we should be targeting? Definitely in Superflex League, he's already rostered, but in a one quarterback league, Will, are you rostering Aaron Rodgers right now? Is he someone you're considering picking up and just stashing if you don't have a great solution at the QB position right now?
Not really. I think it's worth, knocking him up a couple of spots, maybe seeing what he's got. But with the negative rushing upside that he has, I mean, I think in years past, the past 5, 6 years, I feel like he's always been a guy was valued like outside the top 10, outside the top 15 because of his lack of rushing upside. Then he comes in and throws 50 yards or 50 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, and he's a top 3 quarterback. And people hold on to that upside. I think the offense is going to be way better, but I can't really see, him becoming there's better options on the waiver wires in my leagues.
Eric, are you kind of along those same lines as well with A-Raj?
Yeah, by and large, right? Like if you've got some instability at the position, or you're really just down in the muck and mire of the wrong side of the top 12 and you want to speculate with it, it's fine, right? The rushing downside that Will mentioned, the negative rushing upside, is really the death knell here, right? Like you look back to even Rodgers' most prolific of seasons, in those years he was putting up 150 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, right? So like he would do enough with his legs. You'd have some timely scrambles and scores, and I don't think that's really in his bag. And now we're talking about a guy this year that isn't really passing the ball all that much, right? Last night in a very competitive game, 35 pass attempts. So the defense is strong enough to the point where they shouldn't be getting blown out of a whole lot of games. So I would imagine he's going to be in that kind of 30 to 40 passing volume range every single week. And then without the rushing upside, there's not a whole lot to get excited about,
Yeah, it's a good point. And I feel like nowadays, like so many teams do have like a great 1A and one situation there that, having 2 elite wide receivers isn't totally uncommon. So yeah, I think it's good analysis. I like my frisky Jets, so I think I was getting a little excited there. But either way, I greatly appreciate the Fantasy Football Advice Network for powering this segment. It's a great community they're building over there. Make sure you're checking them out at the fantasyfootballadvice.com and on the Fantasy Sports Advice Network app as well. They also have baseball and basketball content over there, and great communities and great conversations between fantasy football and NFL betting degens. Guys, that'll be it for us tonight here on the IBT podcast. Make sure you're connecting with Will at Will Starlipper on Twitter. You can also find him at Fantasy Fortune on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Is that correct, Will?
Yes.
Awesome. What's on the agenda for the rest of the semester, man? Have you reached that like burnout point? I felt like week 6, week 7 of the semester, I was usually like, oh, I'm fucking dragging a little bit. I need the weekend to get here sooner than later.
Oh yeah, and it happens to be it's the midterms and projects and papers, and of course they all happen to be due at the same time, and then you're behind on it, and you're like, do I really need to go to this next class? It's not attendance based, and it's getting to that point.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you, man. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us here on the program. We greatly appreciate it. Eric is at Fantasy Nab on Twitter. You can check out everything he's doing over there as well. How's Pros with Joe's going this year? How's everything rolling with that? Started off hot, Eric. I was 2-0 for the first time, Didi and I, and we've since had some injuries. We battled back. We got old A-Raj on the bench, though. He might be our secret weapon here to get us some dubs.
Man, more so than any other league, the format of Pros with Joes is one to where those front runners, those 2-0, 3-0 teams, they can have a reckoning land on their lap real quick, right? So it is fairly wide open. There's actually a couple of teams that seem to be putting a bit of distance between themselves and the field. Will be sending out a mid-season scoreboard so that people can get a better gauge of how they stack up, not only in their own division, but also across all of the 5 conferences.
I beat our co-host Steve. That's really all I cared about. Steve's usually
And you're still in contact with your co-manager, man. You're taking steps forward this year.
Yes.
Shout out,
Didi and I. Shout out Didi. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us, not just this Tuesday, every Tuesday night here on the IBT Fantasy Football Podcast. Easiest way to support us, check out the website, inbetweenmedia.com. Also, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel. Come back, hang out with us again. Thank you all so much. We'll catch you next time. Until then, keep it in between. Thank you.